I'm sure there had to be something where Jesus was put on the spot and had to de-escalate people, right? He probably did that often. But one of the stories that stood out to me comes from the book of John, chapter 8, and it's the adulterous woman. Um, so here, I'm just going to kind of paraphrase and read a few of the scriptures. But here, they bring this woman who had been caught in adultery. They bring her out to the forefront. Um, Now, the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman caught in the act of adultery, and after placing her in the center of the courtyard, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman has been caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now, in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such woman. What then do you say?" So right here, immediately they bring her out to the squares. They put her in front, so they're blasting her in front of everybody. So you can only imagine, and right away they're calling for stoning her already, right? Because that's what the law of Moses. So I could only picture this in my mind, how the mob quickly starts forming. Everybody's picking up stones. They might not even know this woman, but they're gonna partake in a stoning, right? I mean, it's out in the public square now, so they're like, okay, well, we're about to witness this. Well, let's be part of it. So everybody's picking up their stones, and people are gathering, and the mob is building, and everybody's like, stone her, stone her. I can only imagine, right? But they bring her to Jesus. Why? Because they're trying to trap him, kind of see what he says, see what he's gonna do, right? Because they're putting him on the spot. So verse number 6 on John chapter 8. Now they were saying to this to test him, so that they might have grounds for accusing him, right? They want to turn around and use that against Jesus. But Jesus stooped down. And I highlighted that because in a situation when you're going to de-escalate, you got to bring somebody down. The woman, I can only picture her when they brought her out to the square. I'm sure they probably grabbed her, manhandled her, and then they plotted her in the courtyard. So she probably dropped. She's already embarrassed. She's not gonna just stand there. She probably just either knelt or squatted or sat on the ground, and the mob formed around. Because it says here that Jesus stooped down, and with his finger he wrote on the ground. When they persisted in asking him, he straightened up and said to them, "He who is without sin among you, let him be the first to throw a stone at her." And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. Now they heard this, they began leaving one by one, beginning with the older ones. And as he was left alone, and the woman where she was in the center of the courtyard, and straightening up, Jesus said to her, "Woman, where are they? Did no one condemn you?" She said, "No, no one, Lord." And Jesus said, I do not condemn you either. Go. From now on, do not sin any longer. And I like that story because I was reading some commentaries, and as I was reading, trying to dissect this, I could, like I said, I imagine the mob, everybody's upset, and it's like, yeah, stone her, right? And it's just like, they're just followers. They don't know what's going on. They probably came out of their houses and they just heard a bunch of yelling. Well, let's go be part of that, right? Why? Because the majority of the people always want to be in the walla, as they say in Spanish, right? Being part of the mix, right? But
kind of like when people come together to
when somebody runs, everybody starts running, and you don't know why.
Exactly,
right? It's a mass chaos.
You're influenced by
correct.
it. Correct.
So I could only imagine that, right? But I like how Jesus stooped down, and of course he scribbled, and even to this day it's debated what he wrote on the ground. Nobody knows, but he wrote something. But he stooped down, and as I was reading, it's because he was showing, he understood that there was a shame for the woman. She was being disgraced and humiliated in the square, but in the same token, Jesus stooped down and got on her level to show humility, and also to show that he cared enough about her. So that kind of calmed the situation down, because now he's focused on her, not focused on the mob. And that quickly, and I was thinking de-escalate. What is the purpose of de-escalate? In my opinion, is you're disarming that person, whether with words or with body language. And Jesus here in this story demonstrated both. First, he used his body language. He kind of came down to her level, looked her in the eye, and then he probably got her to stand up. if she wasn't already standing by that moment. And he asked her, where are they at, right? But he also used words for the mob, and he disarmed the mob. You can imagine they probably already had their stones ready to throw it. But with his words, who's out here? Who let he who's without sin cast the first stone? That immediately disarmed them.
Yeah.
So in a situation, how does this translate to real world? You're encountering somebody who's very hostile, maybe is yelling. If they're yelling, well, what do you think we need to do? The opposite of that. Maybe we need to speak softly, more calmly.
Yeah.
And I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Well, maybe if you stop yelling, you'll hear what I have to say.
Yeah.
And it brings that person down. It brings their defense walls, whatever defense mechanisms, it brings them down. And then you're able to communicate.